We're going to go ahead and get started with today's program, which is the BidBuy ERP Interface 7.1 Enhancement and Master Contract Functionality Training Tuesday session. So those are a whole lot of words. We had a very smooth day yesterday, so I think all of you out there have a pretty good idea of what's going on, but I think that this session this morning is going to give you a lot of in-depth information that's going to be very helpful. As usual, we will be recording it, so it will be available. We have a very large crowd today, so we're anticipating that there may be ongoing need for people to go back and reference this session. Please feel free to do that whenever you would like. As always, on these sessions, please make sure that you use the chat functionality if you have any question that you would like to submit. In the past, we've had instances where people have used the Q&A functionality, and when you use the Q&A functionality, we actually don't see that. So the chat functionality will get to us, and we will be sure to answer your question. And as always, if you have any question of any kind, submit it at any time. It doesn't have to be during the time that we're talking about that topic. If we don't get to your question right away, we will get to the end and we'll go back and try and pick up any questions that we missed. We have two expert presenters with us this morning. It is Amy Adams, who is an SPO and member of the BidBuy core team, has been working with BidBuy for quite a while. Since almost the very beginning, if not the very beginning. And we have Brad Burnett, who is a Chief Operating Officer at CMS Boss, and he has been working extensively with the ERP folks on the interface. So there's been a lot of work going on behind the scenes, and these truly are our experts who will be able to answer your questions. And if they don't have the answers, they will definitely be able to find you the answers. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Amy Adams to get us started.
Good morning. I just wanted to let everyone know that we've got a little bit of interference on our end with the phone. Not sure if you guys can hear that on your end or if it's causing any problems. But if for some reason you're not hearing us clearly, please use that chat function to let us know. All right, so we have a lot of content to go through today, but we wanted to make sure we could cover as much as possible, you know, with it being the second day of Cluster 2 Go Live and everything that we have going on. We wanted to make sure that you guys were able to move along with your contracts and sending purchase orders through the interface. So today we're going to go over the purpose and objectives, the 7.1 enhancements since our initial January Go Live, master contract functionality, now that CMS and Do It are live as well, item requirements, demo and error resolution, both supported, specifics for Cluster 2 on what to do with those master blanket purchase orders between the June 21st stop and now, also interface support and questions. So the purpose of the interface, we're trying to prevent duplicate entry, reduce data entry errors between the two systems, also automate the connection between procurement and fiscal, and kind of connect the view and relationship between BidBuy and SAP. The objective today, you should leave here being able to successfully send master blanket purchase order transactions resulting in the creation and updating of contracts in SAP, resolve the ERP interface errors, and understand and communicate these interface requirements to coworkers and management within your agency. So the 7.1 enhancements. One of the things that we introduced with this Cluster 2 Go Live are batch error messages. So before, if you were a pre-Cluster 2 agency and you utilized the interface between January and now, you would receive an error message at a time. Now, you'll receive them in groups. So you'll see a string of error messages if you have multiple ones. We do want to let you know, though, that SAP processes these in 2 rounds. And so you may receive receive 2 rounds of error messages. So you fix the first round, you send the purchase order through, you may receive another round of batch error messages to be updated and fixed on your purchase order through another change order on your purchase order. In addition to that, the notes functionality, BidBuy notes are viewable under the supplier text in SAP. There's also an extended material description. This is viewable under the item text in SAP. For those that were live between January and now, also, you might have seen some of those SOAP errors. So what we tried to do with those, the SAP team went through and created basically multiple errors now. So instead of seeing just one generic SOAP, it's kind of broken down to say, you know, this is exactly what needs to be addressed. Also, we just want to note that as you begin using the interface, you know, please send any enhancement requests to stateuser.bidbuy@illinois.gov. Our team will review that alongside the ERP team and see, you know, what we can do to make this more user-friendly for you and enhance it for all users. We do want to note, just before we move on for these errors, that there is a report that can be ran, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But if an error exceeds 1,000 characters, you'll get a special error. So we'll go through that. A BI report from BidBuy is required to see the full message.
Okay, master contract functionality. This says CPO General Services, CMS, and Do-It contracts are available. They are not currently available. We are working on releasing them. They have gone through the interface and they have been created in the SRM portal, but until we are able to release them, they won't be available for use. For the Cluster 1 and Cluster 1Bs, those agencies, they had to rebuild. They were basically creating the master contracts for themselves and for the line items they were using. You will not do that anymore. You will just use the master contract as under the CMS, Do-It, or CPO org. I believe Do-It's in the same situation as us, getting their contracts still passed through the interface, and we'll be getting those released here shortly. You're going to see the items with material master numbers, and the ones that begin with a 5 are for materials, and the ones that begin with a 6 are for services. Any material master numbers that you'd used in the past, and this is again for the Cluster 1 and 1B and prior agencies, once you use your stock, you'll be retiring those material masters and moving on to the ones that have been created by CMS and Do-It. And Steve Ferris sent out the latest, I believe Steve sent it out, the latest version of the material masters on June 22nd, and that's going to be, that's going to evolve and more are going to be created, and there'll be updates sent on that. You can search for the material masters in SRM. I believe it's the MMO3 screen that you would want to look at. And if, I guess my suggestion would be search for less. Less is more, because we did just have this 40 characters to work with, so some of the descriptions, they are a little abbreviated, I guess I could say, so it may be a little difficult to find them. You may want to look at by NIGP code, but break it down into a smaller search criteria, and then maybe you can build your way out from there. But once you do find them, then you can make a note of them and keep it handy so that you know what they are for future reference instead of having to search all the time. Okay, one of the biggest errors that you're going to see when you're creating your contracts is that your line items are set up incorrectly. So here are some of the details on how to get a line item set up and give you the information you need without getting errors. So a normal item will include a material master number. And as long as you have a material master number, you can have a unit cost and or a quantity. You also need to have a target value on that item as well. On all items, you'll have a unit of measure, but you'll need to make sure that the unit of measure matches up with the unit of measure that's assigned to the material master number. So just keep in mind, if you know on your item you need to have your unit cost on there or your quantity, you're going to need a material master number. The other type of item is a product category. On these, you cannot have a unit cost, you cannot have a quantity, you can't have a discount amount or percentage, but you will need to have a target value as well. And as always, you'll always have a unit of measure. That's a required BidBuy field, and it's a drop-down, so you'll always have a unit of measure on your item. So this page right here, you may want to print it off and keep it handy. When we went through to put our master contracts through, we had our contracts set up in BidBuy the way we wanted them, and some contracts had lots and lots of errors. And it was because the items weren't set up properly. Once we created the material master numbers, that you can have whatever unit cost and quantity you want on those. And you'll see on the master contracts, we have used a item target value and overall contract value of $9,999,999.99. It may show up on the BidBuy screen as 10 million, but in the background it's got all the nines, and that helps SRM identify that these are masters along with some other fields.
Okay, so we kind of wanted to get in and show you some information. So we have these nice screenshots here, but we basically kind of wanted to walk you through what to expect. So what we're showing here is basically we have a purchase order that's in progress. You'll see that it's clear. This is the summary tab of the purchase order, and it's ready to go. So it's gone through approvals in BidBuy. It looks just fine and ready to be sent through the interface. So this is before sending and receiving any errors or any messages back from SAP. So I went ahead, I sent the purchase order through, and it's telling me that I have some things to fix. So I see this ERP message response with a date and time stamp, and it's telling me that the delivery time is mandatory, that my product category for line number 1 can't have a target quantity, and also my product category for line 1 cannot have a price. So I've broken the line items rule, and I didn't put in a delivery date. So in order to fix this, I would go and I would look at my error resolution document, which was also shared with this presentation. So this updated, there is a version out there right now. This is the updated one. This one will be posted soon to the website, and we'll go over where you can find that in a bit. But what I would do here is I would look to see, where is my error in order to fix it. So here it's telling me product category for the contract line number cannot have a price. It's telling me what's causing it, and then it's telling me how to fix it. So what we try to do over here in how to resolve the error is, 1, be very clear in our instruction, and 2, underline the BidBuy field of what exactly needs to be updated. So as Brad said, if you want to have certain criteria on your line items, such as price or quantity, it needs to be one or the other, either product category or material master. So you'll see here for this one in particular, we say either you need to take these out or you need to get a material master number. So based on your business decision within your agency, you would need to update your items appropriately. So what I did with this purchase orders. One, I updated that delivery time, which is my days ARO in BidBuy, which is right here. You can see that I have 0. It wants a number of 1 or greater. And then I updated my items appropriately so they reflect, what I needed to. So when I moved, and I did this through a change order process. So what you'll need to do is once you try to send your purchase order, in order to update these items, you need to create a change order in BidBuy. It'll allow you to update the tabs that need to be updated, most of them dealing with the General or Items tab in BidBuy. So once I'm on the Summary tab of the change order, I can see exactly what I did. So it'll break it down for me. Days ARO, I updated to 10. I changed the quantity from 100 to 0, and I also changed the unit cost from 100 to 0. So I updated to meet the requirements of the interface. What we wanted to know here especially, if you place comments in this comment for hold change order, it's going to send an email to the vendor, regardless of if you showed a vendor or not. So be careful about placing comments in this box. If you'd like to place comments for the change order, place them down here. These comments do not trigger an email to the vendor, so place them here instead. Unless, of course, you want it to go to the vendor, then you can place whatever you want here in this box.
I learned one little thing yesterday. After months and months of calling days ARO delivery days, I know what it means now. After receipt of order. So the number of days after the receipt of the order that you want the object or the item back.
Nice. Very helpful.
It only took like a year.
We do have a question. Yes, the screen that Brad did reference was
to display the material master numbers, in SRM, it's the MM03 screen, 03.
Okay. So we apologize for any sound interference. If you receive additional interference, please let us know. We do have one additional question. On the change order comments box, does the vendor see the comments if it is filled in, or do they just receive an email? They will see the content that is written in the comment for the whole change order box. That will be part of the email that gets sent to the vendor. Down here for these, where it's a header item changes, and these comments, I don't believe these go unless you have it showing to the vendor. But I don't believe the comments are part of the email that are down here in the header item. But what I would suggest doing and what we can do to follow up is some additional testing just to confirm our understanding. But like I said, the comment for the whole change order, that will go as part of the email. All right, so what I did for my purchase order is I wanted to send the notification to the vendor. I wanted them to, let's say, my process was, this is a purchase order, this is a contract that I want the vendor to get notified of. So what I'm doing is it's my first time sending it through the interface. I want them to receive the purchase order email and all of that. So I've chosen to send that notification, and this is the screen that I would see vendor notification results and who it would be going to. So once you apply the change order and resend the BidBuy purchase order, this is a successful transaction. The screen looks the same now as before. I got rid of all of my errors. If anything, you may receive some warnings. Those won't stop you for moving forward. There'll be yellow warnings to say, you know, just beware of this or that. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but in general, the red errors will prevent you from moving forward. Warnings are okay. It's just something that we want to make sure you're aware of.
So something that, the reason we did the bulk error messaging, previously you would receive one error at a time. You could have 10 errors on the contract, but you'd only receive one, you'd go in to fix it, and oh, here's another one. So you wouldn't be able to send your change order through. You'd have to delete it, start over, do your first error, then your second error, and so on. So it was frustrating. We're trying to make it easier on the end users and less frustrating. We did the best we could, and SAP has 2 rounds of validation. So there's still a chance that you could have all these errors fixed and receive another error later. And then what you're going to have to do is go back, delete your change order, start over, and replace it. So we don't want you to, especially if you have line item errors and there's 100 line items, we don't want you to have to make all those changes, get all the way through them, and oh, surprise, you have another error. But we've done the best we could with the way the validations work behind the scenes. So hopefully this will make your lives a little bit easier. I don't know if we mentioned it later on in this presentation, the requirement fields, just marking the required fields on in here. So we had to remove those when we were in the transition going from, so the agencies that were switching from non-SAP to SAP, we removed all those requirements in order for people to start adding all of these items, your days ARO, your SAP vendor number, full contract value, bulletin reference number, publication date, all these fields that we wanted people to have time to fill in and not have to do it overnight, basically, but still be able to use the contracts during that transition period. So sometime soon, today we're going to probably add those back on, and then it'll be BidBuy will stop you from moving on without those being populated. Otherwise, if they are left blank, you will get the error later on.
The only one that we can't update are, of course, some of the item requirements, like the price, you know, the quantity and that kind of thing, as well as the days ARO. Those fields are obviously built into the by speed product, but the custom columns are the ones that will be updating to be required if they are required in SAP to kind of help you along and prevent you from having to do a change order later on. Oh, we have a question.
If there's 50 errors the first round, and you enter your change order, and then you get another error, would you have to re-enter the first 50?
It depends. If you didn't fix them all the first round, then yes. If you fixed them all and you received another round, then that change order is in sent status. The first change order you did is in sent status. If you didn't address those, though, it doesn't move to sent status, and you have to delete that change order because you can only have one in progress change order in BidBuy at a time. So then you would need to refix them. So what we suggest doing is one of 3 things. One, take a screenshot of your error resolution page. Also, too, on the summary tab of your change order, it lists the errors. So you can click back between the tabs here in BidBuy to see on my summary tab what my errors were. So there's that option. 2, you can run this report that we're going to show you in just a minute. Or 3, you know, export them to a notepad or whatever you need to do so that you know, these are all of the ones that I need to fix. Because what will happen is when you send that change order through from BidBuy and it doesn't fix all of those first round of errors, then it'll only show you the updated errors, ones that are still existing. Is that right? So
if you have an additional error, then you will have to fix all the others again. So you will have to delete that change order and start over.
So then you'll need to know what were my errors and fix them, and then fix the additional ones that you receive.
Yeah, it won't make it to sent status if there's an additional error, and then you'll have to make all the changes again. And that could be very time-consuming.
Yes. So track your errors. If you receive a message, take a screenshot, run that report, whatever you need to do so that you don't have to, possibly do multiple rounds of error resolution for the same thing.
Yeah, you may have to start over and re-enter all of those changes again, unfortunately.
So where it becomes, major, time-consuming type of thing is if you have a contract with many line items and you have to fix each of those line items, price or quantity or material master if you're putting in material masters. So be sure to track, what you've done along the way. Okay, so we do have an instance in BidBuy where if you receive errors back from SAP and they exceed 1,000 characters, it'll give you this error. You'll see DAO exception right off the bat, and my errors that came back exceed 1,000 characters. So what we would like you to do to see your individual errors is run this report in BidBuy. So we have the dev side pulled up because we don't like to do anything in the prod environment. So I'm in the CMS org.
If you are working in prod, you will run the report in prod, but for our demonstration purposes, we're not.
Yes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to my little wand for my ad hoc reporting. I'm going to click this cancel button. I'm going to go to my library. And you'll see a list of reports here. Now, you may not see as many as I see here because I have different rights, but in general, you should have access to this report. So I'm just going to type in the keyword interface. Oh, sure. Well,
Hold down Control and scroll your mouse up.
for some reason, it's not letting me.
I think it's because you're sharing.
Yeah. So we apologize, but this detailed instruction is in the error resolution document, so you'll be able to run it afterwards too, based on the instruction in that document. So if I search by interface, it's the only report that pulls up for it. It's pre-built, and it will have, all of these are the ones for CMS. But what you can do over here, and because I have different rights as well, I see obviously all of the agencies. I could have a date range. I could select a particular agency. I can select a particular user. So I can narrow this down. But this is how you run the report, and this is kind of what it looks like. So you'll see the date that it was created, the agency, the document number, and then the error string. So the error string, these are the ERP reports that exceed 1,000 characters. So what you can do with this is export it to an Excel document. I'll open it. This is probably a large document, so it's taking a little bit of time.
While we're waiting for this to open, on the columns, if you right-click on those, you can create your filters and filter it down to you probably just have access to just your agency, but different items that you may want to change. And you can run all kinds of reports with every field that's up here.
Yes, you can add filters, remove filters, you can create additional filters. So if you have a particular document number you want to search by, you could paste that in this field. We have separate training material out there for the BI functionality as well on our trainer support page. But what I'm doing here with this is I just exported it to Excel. I can save it, and that way I can track my changes along the way.
Okay, making sure your contracts are synced and that they are actually supported by BidBuy in the interface. So some agencies may have entered their contracts into SAP before they entered them into BidBuy, and there's a chance that those contracts will not be supported by the interface. Reasons why this could happen would be that your line items aren't in the same order. The descriptions may not match word for word, and that could cause things to get out of sync, possibly. You're going to receive, so say you've got your contract already created in SAP, and then you go into BidBuy and enter it in BidBuy. You need to make sure that you enter in that alternate ID number, which is the SAP contract number. So otherwise, you're going to create a duplicate contract in SAP, and you do not want to do that. But when you're entering your contract into BidBuy, if this is a situation you're in, I would suggest probably copying and pasting from SRM the larger text items to make sure they do line up. Make sure the line items are in sync as far as line item 1 is line item 1. Make sure you're paying attention to the order they're in. I believe SRM is still putting the normal categories together, the normal line items versus the product line items. They're grouping those. So make sure you're looking at that, because the line item number may be different. I believe it's in the second column from the left that shows you the actual line item number versus the order number. You'll run into the same thing in BidBuy, but it doesn't matter. It'll put them in the right order when it goes through the interface. So be looking out for that. And then, yeah, just make sure that all the fields match up. But you're taking a chance, if the contract's been made and created in SAP before it goes into BidBuy, that going forward, if you do go to do a change order, you may get an error at that point saying, hey, this contract is not supported. You're going to have to make the changes manually over in SAP.
So what we have to kind of help with that is a mapping document that's also posted online so that you know this field in BidBuy correlates to this other field in SRM or SAP. So that's being updated as well, and the newer version will be posted online. But we will have that available for you to take a look, because any time you make changes to the contract in SAP, you'll want to double check to say, does this impact my contract in BidBuy? And if it does, you'll want to do what Brad said and make sure those stay in sync. I think we have a question. Is there a way to tell whether a contract was interfaced from BidBuy versus manual entry in SAP?
So if the contract has been interfaced from BidBuy, it would have been, the alternate ID would have been populated already. If it's been entered in SAP first, you would receive a warning message that it could possibly be out of sync. As long as when you're creating that BidBuy contract on your own, you're populating that alternate ID field, and it does notice and say, hey, yeah, that contract exists. These look like the same contracts, but it'll give you a warning message that, hey, you may have to make manual entries if something did go wrong.
will that happen after you hit save and continue? Or what?
So, yeah, after you save and continue and move it to sent status and BidBuy. But as long as it's referencing that SAP alternate ID, which is the SAP contract number, then you should get that message then. And it's a warning, so you'll be able to work through it and continue using the contract even if it isn't in sync.
Different in SAP
Does it look different?
if it was entered in BidBuy versus entered in SAP?
No, it'll look identical.
Okay.
You may want to add a note, I guess. I'm trying to think. I guess if it's the same person managing the contract all the time, maybe they could make a note outside of the system, or I'm afraid if you put it in the note section and you're the one that manages it all the time, you're not going to go look at the notes.
Right, so the suggestion was if you do have a PO in BidBuy that is not synced and you want to record that so that you don't have that question, you would have the option of including a note in notes, just an option that would say not synced with SAP.
But it is always encouraged to enter your contracts in BidBuy first and use the interface to create it. You won't have to worry about duplicate entry and these contracts being out of sync for the long term.
Okay, so cluster 2, master blanket purchase orders that were being processed between June 21st to basically last Friday. So these agencies, and this is strictly geared towards cluster 2 master blanket purchase orders that were being processed. So if you weren't in that cluster, this doesn't really apply to you, but some of the information that we're sharing may be helpful just for future needs. So we did a training session on the 21st, saying that the interface is basically being turned on for those cluster 2 agencies on the BidBuy side. Those agencies did not have access to SAP yet, gained access July 1. And so what was happening with those is what we instructed is don't send those purchase orders through, right? You can get your approval, you can have it in ready to send status, but please don't send them. We understand that some of those were sent, so we split them up into 2 sections. So the first one is if you did not send your purchase order or your change order, you may now send those via the interface. It may require the SAP fields to be populated. So like Brad was saying, you may receive errors for your items so that they comply with what's required in SAP. So you may be reaching out or searching for material master numbers that would apply to your agency for your contracts. So that's an example. In addition to that, those required custom columns that map over to SAP will now need to be filled in, and one of those being the day's ARO for delivery.
And
go ahead, Rich.
Sorry. Before you actually try and send it, you won't see any of the SAP errors. It's only when you go to actually send it through that those errors will be returned. So if you look in advance and kind of identify, I guess, once we put the required fields on, it'll probably be a little easier for you to identify which ones you really need. But if you're familiar with it, you can go through, fill in those before you try to send, and then you won't have to do to create or fix the fields later.
And then what you want to do with that, of course, is validate the contract that it was created in SAP. So that applies for every agency live with this interface. We suggest always going to make sure, I've got a successful transaction, in BidBuy, I want to go make sure that it's there in SAP. One of the other ways you'll know is what Brad was saying is that alternate ID. So let me click back.
I've got one.
Yeah. So I know this is a little hard to see, but you'll see here this alternate ID is not filled in. There's no number there. After I fix my errors, now my alternate ID field is populated with my SAP contract number.
And you'll see that the master contracts start with a 9-1, and it looks like the agency specifics will start with a 4-2. And that may differ, but I know that all the masters will start with a 9. So if you go and send your purchase order and you go back and look and there's no alternate ID in that field, and you're going, why not? Go and check and make sure that the purchase order is a master blanket purchase order and that it's not an open market purchase order. I've seen it where there's contracts that were created as an open market, you go through all the fields and all the work and then you send it through but it doesn't actually go through the interface. An open market will not go through the interface and will not create an SAP. So one of the first things you may want to do is make sure your contract's set up as that master blanket purchase order. If it is not and you've set it up, you can clone it and change the type over to a blanket. And that's within the type of, so even when you do the clone and you'll set up your new document, you can pick blanket at that point, but it won't change it over to a blanket. It's actually over on the PO type, over on the right-hand side, third field down on this screen. Now it's in the middle. And you change it over to a blanket there. And then you could actually send it through the interface.
We have a couple questions. How do you get a new SAP vendor number if they are a new vendor to the state?
So the vendor will go through their normal registration process with the IOC and various other agencies, and then they would probably need to contact, I'm going to throw out Steve Ferris's name at this point in time. Going forward, it'll probably be the Do It Help Desk, and then they will create an SAP contract number. Steve, if you're on the phone, if you can confirm that. I don't know if you can speak.
You can unmute yourself, Steve.
I believe that would be the process currently.
Or respond via chat.
Or respond via chat also, Steve, if you like, if you're on.
Now, if you do not have the vendor number, but they are an active vendor with the state, you can go, and you have access to SAMS, you can go into SAMS and go to your VEN 2 screen, and you'll be able to see the SAP vendor number on there. One other thing, okay. What was I going to say? Oh, so the vendor tab that's in BidBuy, there's no validation between that and the SAP vendor number. So you'll have your vendor register in BidBuy, they'll have a vendor number in BidBuy, but it has no correlation, there's no validation between it and the SAP vendor number. So you need to ensure you're picking the right vendor number, make sure we're sending the orders to the correct people and paying the right people. When it comes to releases off masters, you're going to be doing that release off master out of BidBuy, and it'll be sent electronically to the email that's on the BidBuy vendor number, but it has no correlation to what's going over. You're going to do that release as well in SAP manually and entering your fiscal information over there. You just make sure you've got the right vendor. We don't want to be sending money to the wrong people.
So what Brad is referring to here is on the general tab, this SAP vendor number. This is what you want to ensure is correct with what is in SAP for that vendor, dealing with the contract and payment, and you've been trained on different options, on what to select, you know, where to look, all of that as part of your onboarding with SAP. So we're not going to cover that piece today, but that's where you'll want to place that SAP vendor number. And what Brad is saying is not interfaced is this vendor tab here with this vendor address. So this information may or may not match what is in SAP depending on what you need and how the vendor's requested to be set up. What we have in BidBuy are bidders. and contract, remit to addresses. What SAP has is who's being paid, as well as, where the contract may need to go or releases may need to go, that kind of thing. But these are not guaranteed to match. This is the PO mailing address for the purchase order, and that information may not match what this SAP vendor number is in that data in SAP. And
so that SAP vendor number that we have here, I assume it matches, but it may not, just because this is a test environment. When you're in your production, you'll have that SAP vendor number in here, and then once you go over to SRM, you'll see the actual vendor name in there, and you can make sure they match. You'll also have an, I believe it's the additional payee fields. So any other vendor number in the system that has the same tax ID number, you'll have their additional the additional addresses. Those are separate SAP vendor numbers, but you will be able to make payments to other addresses for that tax ID number.
So we received a couple of comments. One of them is when we get a new vendor registered in SAM, we add them in SAP using the T code XK01. And also, depending on your roles, some of you may be saying, oh, that makes perfect sense. But of course that's the screen we've been trained to use. Others, depending on what training you attended and your role in the system, some of this may be a little bit less familiar to you. So if you have any questions, talk within your agency. If it's interface related, feel free to reach out to us. Every agency has an SAP super user that you can reach out to as well. And we'll cover some of that during the support a little bit later on. One of the other comments I received, it depends on what accounting system you may use. If you're using like AIS, for example, one of the comments we received is, the agency could create the vendor record in AIS, and then it's approved by IOC. So that we're not going to kind of get into. You all know, if you're fiscal, how to get vendors in the system for payment purposes. If you need a vendor added in BidBuy, we can help you with that, and you can reach out to the vendor help desk to get that vendor registered in BidBuy. So we just want to scroll back to make sure we answer all of these questions. So one of the comments we have is we just want to confirm that agency-specific contracts, which are entered as open market, will need to be manually entered into SAP. No. What we suggest doing is analyzing what your agency needs to do. So if you happen to have open market purchase orders that you know need to be in SAP for whatever reason, we suggest cloning them, making the master blanket purchase orders, and sending them through the interface that they're supported. If for whatever reason your agency decides, well, we don't need to do that with this particular contract, then you can go ahead and leave it in the open market. Just understand, the only purchase orders that interface with SAP at this time are master blankets. So if it's something that needs to be entered into SAP, you want it to go through the interface, either convert it to a master blanket or make sure you set it up as a master blanket. And we did receive a question, can you please repeat, regarding the blanket versus open market? And I think that just might have cleared it up.
Yeah.
But if you have an additional question, please let us know. Another question we received is there an anticipated date for an open market interface? Not at this time. There's not. So if you wanted to go through the interface again, that master blanket PO is the way to go. Vendors, let's see, we already went over that one. Received confirmation that Steve's not available right now, so we'll follow up with him with any other questions that may not have been answered today. And I think that's it. One more question. If cloned, what would they do with the first purchase order? With the first purchase order, yeah, you want to make sure you don't have two active purchase orders out there. So if you do have an open market, you need to convert it to a master blanket, cancel the first purchase order. I would suggest at this point, you know, if you're not sure what you need to do, reach out to stateuser.bidbuy. We have material on canceling purchase orders and the various reasons why those purchase orders may need to be canceled. So if you're not sure, reach out to stateuser and we can give you a clear direction. Okay.
Good on that.
So, well, for the sent ones, if you did send your purchase order, your master blanket purchase order, or your change order through the interface during that period of time between 6/21 and, you know, Saturday evening, you probably received interface errors. You can begin to address those now using the materials like the error resolution material, and then validating those in SAP, and we just covered how to validate that, one of them being that alternate ID being populated and using that number to go check that it was created or updated in SAP. If you did not receive an error, again, go validate. Make sure it was created in SAP. Like Brad mentioned too, if you were sending over, if you had your purchase order set up as an open market, that doesn't send over to SAP. So go back and look at those that you processed during that period of time and make sure, for you being a Cluster 2 agency, that that purchase order was processed as you expected and if it needs to be in SAP.
I'm sure the SAP team has covered this for everybody. But when the contract does interface and is created over in SRM, there's a couple fields that are defaulting. It's the order type and class code, I believe. Those are two comptroller fields. It's populating with an A01, I believe it is. So you will need to look at those when you're updating your contracts and updating the fiscal information on your agency-specific contracts over there. But that's just defaulting. It's not coming from BidBuy. We don't have fields for those.
Yeah, there are, the mapping document will detail, you know, what we send over and what fields are updated in SAP. Obviously, it doesn't build a complete contract and you don't have to do anything on it. You will need to make updates on that contract in SAP. So if you have any questions on that and what needs to be updated in those fields, you know, please feel free to reach out to the training material that you have on hand for ERP or your SAP super user and kind of down the line. So here's what we have available for interface support. The first always being training material, okay? So we have a link here to the training resources for BidBuy. So this is the trainer support page that you're used to seeing. It has a link on this page also to the ERP support page, which is this interface training material page. And please be sure as you're going through this material that you always check online. So these are being updated periodically. So you want to make sure that you're always looking at the latest version. So if you come to our trainer support website for BidBuy, you'll see our various training material. But you'll also see the links here for the ERP training materials. So we have the ERP training materials, and then we also have a link here that goes to a broader training site for ERP that will take you to various PowerPoints, demos we've done and recorded, as well as the job aids and error resolution documents and things like that. So always go online, check to see what's out there. You know, that's the best way to make sure you have the updated content. If you have additional questions that may not be answered through the interface training material or the BidBuy material that we have, and it is, you know, interface related, reach out to your SAP super user within your agency, or you can contact BidBuy State User Support. We'll try to assist as well if it's interface related or BidBuy related. Also, the ILACS team, as Brad has mentioned, Steve a few different times, they're always on hand to help as well, and follow direction, given by them in terms of who to contact and those various things. In addition to that, do it help desk. But please, once assigned to a particular team, please respond and let us know that the issue is being worked on or that it's been resolved. What we don't want to happen is that you've reached out to 4 different areas and we're all working on it, and now we've, dedicated resources, 4 different resources, multiple people to the same thing. Follow the line, or at least, loop everyone in. Let us know so that we're not all dedicated to the same thing, and we can, meet others' needs as well, and we're not all working on the same thing all the time.
Yeah, just our general guidance for reaching out to support to get the fastest response is to choose the help desk that you believe is the one that's best suited to giving you your answer. So pick one, and then if we need to coordinate amongst ourselves, we will coordinate amongst ourselves and we'll reach out to the other help desks. But pick one, and that's going to get you your best response. And as Amy just said, we won't be duplicating efforts among different help desks. We'll have one help desk leading the way.
That's the end of our presentation today. I feel we have some more questions. And Brad, unless you have anything additional you'd like to cover?
Nothing comes to mind, no.
Okay.
But yeah, you can always look at the demos that are online. We went through how to set up the contracts and everything in there. I think that may be helpful.
What I will say, if we receive quite a few questions on some of the financial information, what do I do if it's this dollar amount or that dollar amount, or it's PO-based or not? There was a demo done, and it's here. The recording of it is here, and it walks through the SAP side, different options. So we suggest, looking at this material that's out here, looking at the presentation and the associated recording for that, it may help in your efforts. So let's go see what questions we received. So we have, if I have a small one-time purchase for $10,000, once I convert that to a purchase order in BidBuy, I should convert it to a blanket, not an open market, so it'll convert over to SAP. That's an agency decision, and it depends on your training, on what you want to do with your contract over there. So that demo that I just mentioned, I think will really help with that. I would suggest going to take a look at it. But there are different options. Either you can set it up as an open market, not have it go through the interface, or you can set it up as a master blanket and have it go through the interface. I would suggest looking at that demo, talking to your fiscal, talking to your agency, and doing what they suggest you to do. This part here is more of a, I would say, an agency business process decision than a rule. We don't have any additional questions thus far. If you have any, please send them in. What I'll do for now is mute and see what I have coming through. And we will answer them as they come in. We received one other comment. The links in the PowerPoint emailed do not link to a website. So that may be a permission thing. Let me do some checking. If you could maybe send over, what slide number you're trying to go through. But
slide 15.
Okay, so for slide 15, the BidBuy training resource will go out to our trainer support website, and then the ILAC ERP should go out to that website that I had just pulled up. Yes. So it should take you here.
Did you have to hit control or anything?
Yeah, they may have to hold control.
You may need to hold control in your version, depending on how it's set up for you. But it should take you out directly from this slide to the training site. But of course, you know, what we've also done is if you're on our BidBuy trainer support website, which you can get to from just the BidBuy homepage, it will take you here, and you can click on the link from our BidBuy site as well. If for some reason you're still not able to, it may be, you know, permission-based or something restrictive within your agency preventing you from getting to the site. At that point, I would reach out to your IT liaison possibly to see, you know, what the problem may be. All right, well, we don't have any additional questions coming in. If you have any that you think of after, please send them to state user, and we'll try to address them best we can, get back to you in a timely manner. Of course, you know, this will be posted online on our trainer support website, so please keep an eye out for it. We go through on our Thursday train the trainer sessions, you know, where to go to see these recordings and different training material that's out there. So if you have any questions on where to access this, you know, again, feel free to reach out, and we'll get back with you. Thank you for your time today, and thank you for all those who participated in this Cluster 2 Go Live and interface updates. Job well done.